When you've been lying about something for so long, it becomes second nature. You think you're gonna get the truth in a town like this? When you've been lying about something for so long, it becomes second nature.
Do you see the beauty of it? The inevitability. You rise, only to fall. You, Avengers, you are my meteor, my swift and terrible sword, and the earth will crack with the weight of your failure. Purge me from your computers, turn my own flesh against me. It means nothing. When the dust settles, the only thing living in this world will be metal.
You remember me?
How you doing tonight?
Doing well, officer.
Can I see your driver's license, registration, and insurance, please?
Of course. My license is right here, my wallet. It's all right, son. You remember the night in July?
Hands up!
Hey! Wait! Put the phone down! Put that phone! Sir, it's a phone! It's a cell phone! It's just a cell phone! You knew he was unarmed.
Get to the car and put your hands in the air! Officer, please, he's just a kid!
You pointed your gun at him. Okay, get out of the car, son. Easy. You pulled the trigger.
Put the phone away! Put the phone away!
The grand jury determined that no probable cause exists to file any charges against Officer Randall.
This is my son. This is my little boy. You took that from me. The world took that from me. Today we make that right. Hear me when I say this, because I'm only going to say it once. Don't stop filming.
You should just give up now.
Why are we the only people in this country that are expected to do things without violence?
I didn't mean to kill your son!
What you did.
I did what I was trying to do!
I just want justice. That's all I want. This is your jury. The deciders of your fate. Today, you will be tried for the murder of my son. You scared? Are you afraid?
So begins the end.
Now, all you black folks, I suggest you get away from all these white folks. Not you, Steve. You're right where you belong.
So the reason why we're reading here is to show you how all those civilizations of black people, of Africans, because every civilization is an African civilization. You have to remember that. We'll get into the full details of that on The Shape of a World. Egyptians is an African civilization. The Greeks are an African civilization from North Africa. The Romans were an African civilization from North Africa. The only civilization that we are living now, which is technically not a civilization because we just can't get into details right now of what empire that we're living in until we get to Shape of the World, because we are not going to expose all that here, because the dummies and idiots need to get this information so they can go to the lake of fire as evidence, all right? This is technically speaking, and we'll continue with that, but for now, let's look at this. What are we saying? So, we're reading the story of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus was a king of the Persian Empire, which is also an African civilization, because a lot of people, when they hear the word Persia, they think it's in the Middle East. You have no idea, but we're not going to share that right here, right now. But let's read. since you know Persia is Persia, that's fine. It says, Cyrus the Great built the first universal empire stretching from Greece to the Indus what? River. So, like we explained, the word Indus, the word Hindu, is the same as the word India. There's no difference. It's just because a H is added to here in the spelling of India and makes it Hindu. So whenever you hear the word Hindu, it means India. Hindu is the same word, all right? And we'll get into that later, but for now, just remember this. It said this was the famous Achaemenid dynasty of Persia. So every African civilization always had to go to India to get the knowledge of Satan. Because the only people who had the pure knowledge of Satan, because remember this, inbreeding is an unnatural order of how a man should come into this world. So when you hear the word bastard, now people will always make you believe that bastard means a person who does not know their father, all right? But that is not the original meaning of the word bastard. The original meaning of the word bastard means to be born of inbreeding, in which albinos, anybody with straight hair, are all born of. Because if a father impregnates his daughter, what do you call the child? Because that is unnatural order. A father is not supposed to impregnate his daughter. So the child born is a bastard. His origin is unknown. Okay? His origin cannot be ascertained. It's something of an abomination that was not supposed to happen. Abomination means these things must not happen because it is unnatural order. If a mother sleeps with his son and gets impregnated by his son, what do you call the child? There's no name for it. That is the meaning of the word bastard. If someone sleeps with an animal, okay, bestiality is an unnatural order. So this was the customs which was practiced by albinos, anybody with straight hair, in their origin story, which still goes on till today in India. That is why albinos, anybody with straight hair, are the dirtiest, smelling, stinkiest people, because their origin story includes what? Inbreeding, homosexuality, bestiality, rape, murder. This was their norm. So that is why when you go to India, it stinks and smells and people are still defecating on the street because they are all senile. And this is the origin of all albinos, anybody with straight hair in this world, which black people think, oh, I have the best, all right? Oh, I got me a white girl. I got me a white man. You've been stuck with the stinkiest smelling people in the world. Look at their origins. Go to India and see. And today, they wipe everything off and make you believe that they're clean when the foundation of where they came from looks like shit. Literally. Continue reading from this article. It says, by about 380 BC, the Persian hold on Indian regions slackened and many small local kingdoms arose. So Africans always went to India and they always controlled the Indians. Why? Because the Africans are not born of inbreeding for most of them. So they have real knowledge. When they go, they transfer that knowledge to the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, get the pure knowledge of Satan from their Brahmin priests, and then come back and use that knowledge in the African traditions and cultures to rule the people. They now introduce all those things in there and mind control the people as the world is mind controlled today. Does that make sense now? So let's continue reading to show you some other African civilizations that went to India. So in this particular portion, we want to show you how names, so the albinos, anybody with straight hair, have changed the names of all people, right, in civilization. Because you have to understand this. The Greeks never called themselves Greek. Can you believe that? And meanwhile, we are talking about people who lived and thinking that they call themselves Greeks. They never did. The Greeks never called themselves Greeks. So if you were to go back in history to the people who were living in Greece, the black Africans who were living in Greece, or you told someone, can you give me directions to Greece or Greek? They wouldn't know what you're talking about because they never called themselves Greeks. Go figure. Go make your own research for those who like research and see what Greeks call themselves. Have you ever heard the word of Hellenistic or Hellen? That is what the Greeks call themselves. The Hellenes. So when somebody calls themselves Helen today or Helena, what do you think they're saying? That is the name that the Greeks call themselves. And even the word Hellenes for the Greeks who call themselves Hellenes or Helea, all right, was just a name for a particular ethnicity among the Greek country, all right, or clans. Not all of them identified themselves as Hellenes or Hellenes, if that's the right pronunciation. So how do we best explain this? For example, if you went to a country such as Ghana, right? Ghana is a nation. A nation means a country that has very defined specific borders. The name Ghana, as identified by the people who live there, is just a name of the nation. It's not the name of the people. So you have to know the differences between this. Name of a nation is not the name of a people. Because if you spoke to a Ghanaian, really, he would tell you, okay, I am from so and so ethnicity in Ghana. So the same way the word Hellenes was not for everybody in the Greek nation. It was for a particular ethnicity inside the Greek nation. So the Greeks went by different names. So if you go back in history and say you're looking for a Greek man or show me one, they won't find him. So continue reading here. It says, early allusion to the Greeks in India. I want you to pay attention to the words. Long before the arrival of Alexander the Great on India's northwestern border, there are references in early Indian literature calling the Greeks Yavanas. So if you never heard this word today, Yavanas for Greeks, you would have read so many literature books if it was written in old times in archaic English, which is not the English that we speak today, or in any other language, and you would not know it was talking about the Greeks. Do you see what I'm trying to tell you about how history is hid? It says Panini, in ancient Sanskrit grammarian, was acquainted with the word Yavana in his composition. Kalyana explains the term Yavani as the script of the Yavanas. So the Greeks were known as Yavanas by who? By some of the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair. So in their history, they wrote about the Greeks. All right, so we just wanted to show you that every African civilization, and we already showed you earlier that the Romans also went to India, and the Roman Empire is a later empire after the Greeks. And we showed you the Persian, and we talked about the Egyptian, we talked about the Babylonian, and that all African pagan traditions comes from India, because India is the oldest civilization besides Africa. And even though the scum of the earth, albino, anybody with straight hair, who all come from India, their lineage story starts with Ham. And Ham was a black man. The Egyptians came from Ham too. So do you understand where we're going now? The Egyptians of history also were descendants of Ham. And the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, also came from Ham. But why Ham? Because after the flood, Ham brought the knowledge of Satan by sleeping with his father's wife in Noah. Because every time that you have to get the power of Satan, you have to break natural order. And Ham introduced that unnatural order by sleeping with his father's wife and bearing forth a child called Canaan. But from then, let's continue on, because you know where this is going now. So we've explained that there was always an exchange of Satanism for civilization between Africans who always went to India to get the knowledge of Satanism in exchange to civilize the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair whose origins are from India. And we're going to show you a lot more information about what the name India actually means later on. So for now, what you also have to understand is that we already explained that slavery never existed. The reason why we explained that slavery never existed is because when we are going to read the articles that we are going to read to you, you're going to see an insinuation of the word slavery. But once we have cleared out that legend to make you understand that slavery does not exist, then when we read the article, you will read with understanding and understand what we're saying and what the article actually means. And also, we started by letting you understand that Ham, one of the sons of Noah, a black man, introduced Satanism into creation after the flood. Now, before the flood was a different kind of Satanism. It was the Satanism of man mixing with angels, right? It was one of the grossest form of Satanism that you could ever find, because the Bible says that the whole earth was corrupted, but because the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, have removed several portions of the Bible, wrote new books into, changed names, places, and the meanings of things, people do not understand what the Bible says anymore. Because at the end of the day, the Bible was only to be preserved for the high priest. It was specifically written in that format for only a high priest to understand what was taken out, what was imputed, what was changed, and the names that were removed. Even the people who translated it don't even know what they translated. That is how to show you the wisdom of the Creator on how it works, because all this was designed such that when you hear the truth, you will be able to identify it and say, okay, this is really the truth that I've been searching for all my life. Because you can only hear truth from a high priest. And I am not a high priest. I have to keep saying this before people start saying, Tricks of the Estrade says he's the highest priest. I am not, please, okay? So remember, when you're talking about this, remember I mentioned it, that I am not a high priest. I'm not remotely closely associated. I just knew a few of them, interested in their history, and they taught me because I was looking for the truth and happened to be on a flight with one of them. And I was amazed at what I got told. And I was like, is this for real? And he said to me, yes. And that's how I got in contact, because I was looking for this truth, and I got to know them, got to know the remnant, visited the high priest cities, been around with the remnant. And I was amazed that this kind of history can still be around and people do not know. And when I got to understand how the history of how they came to be and how history has been changed to hide them, and they prefer to be hidden today because they've killed so many of them. Because you have to understand, everybody in scripture that you read about that was a high priest always got killed. For example, if you read in the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel, it says that Saul, a king of the remnant, totally exterminated the high priesthood of the city of Nob. If you also read in the story of Elijah and Ahab and Jezebel, Ahab and Jezebel killed almost all the high priests until Elijah had to run into a cave somewhere, where the Creator now spoke to him and said, okay, don't worry, there are some of them that are still around. He hasn't totally killed all of them. So every high priest has always become a problem for the rulership of this world, because they are the mouthpiece of the Creator. They speak for him and they speak the truth. And you'll understand when you hear them speak. So continuing on, so we want to show you how man became corrupted after the flood, because the first corruption of man was corruption of man with angels, which was very gross. Because people don't understand what angels look like, they won't understand how gross it was. But on the shape of our world will make you understand that. So that first corruption took over the whole world. Just like today, Satanism and the love for albinos, anybody with straight hair, the scum of the earth, has overtaken the whole world and is setting the stage for the destruction of the world as it has been destroyed before. Now, but this time is going to be with fire, and we're going to show you how all that works in Legends of Roll Call, so still stick around. So the first corruption was with angels, so the Creator now had to start afresh by the flood, by cleansing the earth of all those people who had corrupted themselves by procreating with angels. Do you get what we're saying now? And so the world had to be wiped away and restarted. And now when it got restarted again, inbreeding through the lineage of Ham has now corrupted the world up to the point that we are now. And now it's ready to be totally destroyed, such that evil will never appear again in the earth. So because Ham started inbreeding by sleeping with his father's wife, not his mother. So that's why if you read in scriptures in the book of Leviticus, it says, you shall not sleep with your father's wife. It's an abomination. Now, people don't understand that, because they'll think the abomination would happen if a son sleeps with his mother. But this is how things work. Remember, in scripture, the Bible said, a man shall leave his father and his mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Because people don't understand how natural order works. When a man marries a wife, not in the way that people marry today, as we have explained what marriage ought to actually be, because a lot of people who are married today are not married according to the Creator, right? So when a man takes a wife, that means he pays her bride price. Him and that woman become one flesh. It doesn't matter if the man has one wife, two wives, three wives or so. They are all one flesh. All those women are joined together to him as one flesh. Okay? So when Ham slept with his father's wife, even though it was not his mother, it is considered as if the woman is Ham's mother, because she is a wife of Noah, and Noah gave birth to Ham. Does that make sense now? All right, so continuing on, Ham, by listening to Satan, meeting Satan, committed this abomination of sleeping with his father's wife, and he introduced inbreeding, which did not exist before the flood, into humanity after the flood. So Ham was a father of Canaan. He was also a father of the Egyptians, or great-grandfather, if that's what you want to call it, and great-grandfather of the Philistines. So all these nations now started understanding that for you to have Satan speak to you and give you knowledge to run stuff, the worldly success that you need, you have to commit abominations and commit other abominations which are associated with inbreeding, which are homosexuality. Bestiality is also associated with inbreeding. That is why you find So many albinos with pets. What do you think that is? It's all part of the process of having the power of Satan. So, incest, rape is also associated with inbreeding. Feminism. So, if you notice, all albinos look effeminate. They look like women. The men too. Right? And also murder. Okay? So, all this is associated with inbreeding, homosexuality, murder, rape, and pedophilia, as well as feminism. Okay? Feminism is also associated with inbreeding. Okay? And there's so many other things that we are going to list. So, because Ham introduced the concept of inbreeding into humanity to have the power of Satan, and the Canaanites, the Egyptians, the Philistines, who are cousins to the Egyptians, are descendants of Ham, they carried on this knowledge and practice. So when the remnant came into being through Abraham, this is why the Creator told Abraham, leave this African place and go to the Middle East, because they are committing so much abominations here to have the power of Satan. Go to the Middle East and I will give you this land for your own people. So Abraham did that, and then the remnants came into Egypt and became servants in servitude after their own royal lineages in Joseph died a couple of centuries after. So when this happened, and the Creator now removed the remnant from Egypt back into the Middle East, and He gave them commandments on their way down there. The very first commandment that the Creator said was, I am the Creator, you shall not inbreed, because inbreeding was in direct opposition to the Creator. So what happened was this: when the Creator gave the commandments, He spoke in length 10 commandments, all right, to the hearing of the remnant. But since the remnant could not hear, because they were not high priests and they were very scared, they only knew of the 10 major commandments. But the 10 commandments has an explanation of what it means. Let's now show you that in the book of Leviticus. So we're in the book of Leviticus chapter number 18, and we're reading from the Greek Septuagint Bible. So what I want you to notice is that this is the same construction of words that you find when the Creator tells and talks about the 10 commandments. But here is an expansion to make you understand that this was part of the first commandment, which said, I am your Creator, you shall not inbreed. All right? So, okay, let's just pull up that side by side so you guys see it, so it doesn't look like we're just talking. All right? So these are two scriptures to show you that Leviticus chapter number 18 in verse number 1 is the same as Exodus chapter number 20 when it starts talking about the commandments, because it starts in the exact same way. Because the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, changed the first commandment so people do not know what it means. So Exodus chapter number 20 on your right screen, and Leviticus chapter number 18 on your left screen. So we're going to read for you to see that it starts the same. So Exodus chapter number 20, which talks about the commandments, the 10 commandments, says, And the Lord spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods besides me. Do you see that? This is the reading right here. Exodus chapter 20 from verse 1. Now, when you go over to Leviticus chapter number 18, which talks about inbreeding, all right? Because this was the first commandment. It starts exactly the same way, all right? He goes here to say, And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and thou shalt say to them, I, the Lord your God, you shall not do according to the devices of Egypt in which you dwelt. Do you see that? Same word in Exodus 20, same word in Leviticus chapter number 18, which talks about inbreeding. All right, so let's continue on now, since we've laid the foundation for you to understand what these people changed, the scum of the earth albino supremacists, to hide the fact that inbreeding was the first commandment that people should not do, because Ham, who was the father of the Egyptians, who became an Egyptian empire, and also the father of the Philistines and Canaan, practiced inbreeding to have the power of Satan. Does that make sense now? So let's continue on. So continue reading now from Leviticus chapter number 18, just to walk you through to understand what inbreeding is, which was the first commandment, which was changed, and now people only remember, I am the Lord thy God, you shall have no other gods besides me. It never said that. The very first commandment said, I am the creator, you shall not inbreed. And then the second one said, you shall have no other gods made after in the image of the Trinity, which we're going to share on the shape of our world. So continuing here, Leviticus chapter number 18, it says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and thou shalt say to them, I, the Lord your God, you shall not do according to the devices of Egypt which you dwell, and according to the devices of the land of Canaan, into which I bring you, you shall not do, and you shall not walk in their ordinances. You shall observe my judgments, and shall keep my ordinances, and shall walk in them, I, the Lord your God. So you shall keep all my ordinances and all my judgments, and do them, and whichever man do them, he shall live in them, I, the Lord your God. No man shall draw near to any of his near kindred to uncover their nakedness, I the Lord. So inbreeding means you shall not at any time procreate with direct members of your families, which includes you and your cousins in that nuclear family. That is what it says. Let's continue reading. It says, you shall not uncover the nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother, for she is thy mother. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not sleep with your mother. This is what the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair who are now touted about as the greatest people in history, have been doing in India for donkey years before they were brought out there, and now they're acting all holy and mighty, preaching to you. So, do you understand why every word from the mouth of an albino is a lie? Because the foundation is based on what? The foundation is based on abominations, on Satanism. Therefore, whatsoever the foundation does, the house will also be built according to the foundation. So whatever is coming out from their mouth cannot be truth. Do you understand now? This is how things work. So it goes on to say, the nakedness of thy sister by thy father or by thy mother born at home or abroad, their nakedness thou shalt not uncover. So your father or your mother bear children by other people, but as long as they are related to you, that means have siblings, you shall not have sex with them and procreate and have children by them. It goes on to say, the nakedness of thy son's daughter or thy daughter's daughter, thy nakedness thou shalt not uncover, because it is thy nakedness. So as a father, you should not sleep with your son's daughter. Your son has a daughter, that means your granddaughter, you shall not sleep with them. It says, thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of the daughter of thy father's wife. Does that make sense? So your father has a wife and has children by another woman. You shall not sleep with any of those children, because they are still your siblings. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's sister, for she is near akin to thy father. That means you shall not sleep with your auntie. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister, for she is near akin to thy mother. You shall not sleep with your auntie still. That means you shall not also sleep with your uncle. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's brother, and thou shalt not go into his wife, for she is thy relation. You shall not sleep with who now? Your father's brother's wife. Your in-laws. Your auntie still, if you want to say that, because your father has a brother and his wife, right? So technically it means you shall not sleep with your auntie, because it's more like the wife to the brother of someone is like a sister. They call them sister-in-laws, right? So for example, you are married and you have a brother. The woman that's married to your brother becomes your sister-in-law. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy daughter-in-law. All right? That means a man will not sleep with his son's wife. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy brother's wife. It is thy brother's nakedness. Okay? The nakedness of a woman and her daughter shall thou not uncover. Her son's daughter and her daughter's daughter shall thou not take to uncover their nakedness. So everything in here talks about the fact of inbreeding. Thou shalt not take a wife in addition to a sister as a rival to uncover her nakedness in opposition to her while she is yet living. That means you shall not sleep with sisters. That also means you shall not sleep with brothers as a woman. Now, someone is going to ask that question, but wait a minute. Didn't Jacob marry two sisters? Jacob married sisters, but that was not his intention. He was tricked under the traditions of the person who tricked them. Because normally, when you go to marry your bride, back in those days, that's how they used to do it. When you go to marry a bride, you marry the woman. You don't see the woman yet. When you go into your room, the woman comes to you at night. After the traditional process, at night, you sleep with her. Does that make sense? So, what happened was, when Jacob woke up at night, he found that they had given him another woman. And he was mad and said, why would you do this to me? Because now tradition means that he has to go away with Leah. Jacob did not marry Leah. He wanted to marry Rachel. But they gave him Leah. So he had no choice but to take it. But he still wanted the woman that he wanted. And Laban said, if you work for me for another 7 years, then you marry Rachel. Because in our custom and tradition, the first daughter has to get married before the second. And this is still some ancient remnant tradition which is still practiced till today. If a man has several daughters, the first daughter has to get married first. If the younger daughter has someone who has to marry her, they'll tell her, just wait a bit. Let the first daughter get married before you get married. It's tradition. So the reason why Jacob did not marry two women, technically, or two sisters, he was forced into it. And he had no choice. He had already slept with Leah, so he already paid. They already made him his wife. He can't take her back under those traditions. They said, this is what you paid for, this is what you got. That was tradition back then. So inbreeding was the very first commandment which the Creator told the remnant not to do. So that's why, for example, if you've ever read in the so-called Gospels about John the Baptist, how he got beheaded. Why was John the Baptist beheaded? Because he told the king at that time, who married his brother's wife, that you have broken the commandment which says you shall not inbreed. You married your brother's wife, and he was beheaded for it. A high priest. So let's continue on with our story now. So we tried to show you that every African civilization to seek the power of Satan, to seek the real knowledge, always went to the children of Satan, the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair whose origin is from India. And we've explained and made you to understand that the first corruption of the earth was men sleeping with angels. And the world was destroyed for that corruption of men sleeping with angels, creating abominations. And after the flood, the new abomination was inbreeding as well as crossbreeding. All right. Now, crossbreeding is a mixing of species. So when people were sleeping with angels before the flood, that was crossbreeding, which was not supposed to happen. It's also an abomination. So today, crossbreeding would be a black person sleeping or procreating with an albino anybody with straight hair. Because people do not understand history. They do not understand that the Miscegenation Laws, which was created, and the Racial Integrity Act was actually based on the commandments of the Creator, that you shall not crossbreed yourself with an albino. They don't know that. But we're going to show you as we continue on. But for now, we want to make you understand that every African civilization of the kings always went to India to get a transfer of satanic knowledge, and then they would transfer civilization to the senile scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, whose origins are all from India. So the reason why you're looking at the screen right now is trying to show you that, because people do not know history. If you go to India, there are African tribes still in India to this day, but they refuse to mix with the Indian population. They are called Siddhi. Right here, Siddhi is a Hindu word, and we're going to explain what it means, all right? Okay, let's explain what Siddhi means before we continue on, because if you read this history or if you heard about it before, you might get very confusing details about it, because they have made you to believe that every black person or every African you find anywhere in the world went into that place by slavery. This is why they try to explain black people away, to make you believe in the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, whose origins come from India, and then we are going to show you their real origins now as we continue on. So let's show you the meaning of what Siddhi means before we continue on. So we're on a website, and as you can see on this page right here, even though it's not very clear, that this is African royalty in the 1800s, all right, or early 1900s, when the camera was invented on horses in India, all right. It says here the multiple past and presence of cities in India. Let's show you what that word city means before we continue on. It says here, cities and Habshis are Indian citizens of African descent who live in the states of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Karnataka in India. Continue reading. It says, within secondary literature, the word city, which is a Hindu word. When we say Hindu, please always remember it means India. We've already explained that the word Hindu is the same as India. It's just because the letter H is removed in the spelling of Hindu, that's how you get the word India. It's one and the same word. So Hindi, India is the same thing. Okay? Continue reading. It says, within secondary literature, the word city, which is a Hindu word or Indian word, can be traced to the Arabic word Sayyid, which either denotes a title and or lineage to Prophet Muhammad. Did you hear that? It says that the word denotes a title. To who? To Prophet Muhammad. Continue reading. Habshi, on the other hand, indicates a geographic linkage to El Habash, the Arabic term for Abyssinia, or what includes parts of present-day Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Sudan, which in essence means what? African. Or what? Africa. So, in India, they have Africans who are called city, which means royalty. Because if you go to study the history of the city, they'll always tell you that they came in as slaves. No, they did not. Let me show you how history is written. Do you see this picture right here on this article? It shows you of black people, Ethiopians, Africans, riding in horses in where? In India. But if you read in the article, it will tell you that they came in as slaves. So do you understand how pictures paint 1,000 words? And once you now go read what you've been told, you forget what you see? Do you now see why people can look and see with their eyes, but forget what they see and believe what they are told? Do you see that now? Because if you read in this article further down, it's going to show you that the so-called city, in which it tells you that it means, the name city means royalty, all right? And royalty are kings. It tells you that they came in as slaves. And let's show you from this article so you see. So we're reading from the same article, so you see how they show you the picture, which is what people see every day. They see the dominance. That if a black person marries an albino, the children come out to be more black than albino. But yet they believe that white people, albinos, anybody with straight hair, the scum of the earth, are superior to black people. All right, let's read here. Because this same article that we just showed you the picture of Africans in horses in black and white in the late 1800s or early 1900s in India. Let's read now. It says, the problem of determining the proper terminology is only one aspect, because we're continuing from where we stopped. Remember, we read this part to you that says that city is a title, all right, that indicates royalty or lineage to Prophet Muhammad. Then further down here, just a couple more paragraphs down here, which he will also say that cities came as slaves. So I want you to see how people can forget what they see and rather remember what they are told. Mind control. It goes on to say here, the problem of determining the proper terminology is only one aspect of producing a nuanced understanding of these communities. Another problem which arises is their amalgamation into a people united by geographic, ethnic, and temporal origins. Most journalistic coverage, pay attention, most journalistic coverage today tends to reduce cities to a single hidden or forgotten tribe which arrived in India as part of the East African slave trade. So you see how they tell you what city actually means, but because it concerns black people, because the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair, write all this stuff to control the majority of the black people of the world by making them to feel or think inferior of themselves, it always has to introduce slavery. Because once you read that, all of a sudden, everything that you have seen with your eyes, you forget about it and remember that black people are slavery. That is how mind control, witchcraft, sorcery works, by making you to forget what you see with your eyes and believe what you are told. That is how the world is controlled, through satanism, through whiteness, through feminism, through the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair, who are the children of Satan. Let's continue now. So continue reading here. We want to show you how Africans went into India and civilized albinos, anybody with straight hair, and gave them the knowledge which now made them to become the Ottoman Empire. And when they got this knowledge, they now reversed the caste system. So let's explain the caste system before we continue on. The history of albinos starts with inbreeding, okay? But here is what happens. When black people consistently inbreed for 4 generations, the children come out having straight hair and pale skin. This is what happens. So since the origin of albinos, anybody with straight hair, started with black people inbreeding, when these children came out to be albino, anybody with straight hair, and now we're talking about ancient Indian history. Those children who came out with straight hair and pale skin were relegated to be lowest class citizens in the society, not fit for rulership. So you have to understand this, okay? This was what was going on in India. Blacks were on top, and albinos, anybody with straight hair who look like all the albinos today, were at the bottom. But these blacks were always inbreeding, okay? So the population of albinos, anybody with straight hair, is on the increase in India because they are all inbreeding. They are sleeping with their siblings. Father is sleeping with his daughter. Mother is sleeping with son. They are sleeping with half siblings, uncle, aunties, nieces, nephews, cousins, and everything else in between. So they are getting more albinic people. And the blacks at the top are shrinking with time. And now they've totally shrinked out of India. There are no more black people except these Africans who decide not to crossbreed themselves with the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair, dirtiest, smelliest, stinkiest people in the world, to contaminate themselves, still remain African. But they are Africans from Africa who came and civilized the albinos, anybody with straight hair, during the times before the 1500s of the Ottoman Empire. So the question we now have to answer is, why did these Africans go into India, even though we know that every African civilization has always gone to India to get the knowledge of Satan and transfer some civilization to the Indians? But why these particular Africans who were Ethiopians, Sudanese, and Eritreans? And as we can see, it says that they had lineage to what? To Prophet Muhammad. Remember, the Prophet Muhammad that people talk about today was actually an African. And this is one thing I have to make you guys understand finally today. The Islam that is practiced today is not the Islam that was practiced when Prophet Muhammad, an employee of the Roman Empire, introduced Islam to the original Arabs. Did you get what we just said there? It's not the same. The so-called Islam today that people practice is Islam rewritten by the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair. Now, the black people at the top of Islam know this. So that is why, if you take a look, the Nation of Islam, led by maybe Louis Farrakhan or by Elijah Muhammad, is not the same Islam as Islam that's practiced by everybody else. Because these black occult leaders who work for white supremacy know this truth. They know that. So, continuing on with this story, we want to answer why this so-called Africans city, right? Look at their faces right here. As you can see, this is a city in India, went into India, lived in India. Now as their descendants, they are hidden, they are being trampled upon, but the name still remains city because city means royalty. You can go look that up anywhere. The word city means royalty. People cannot be slaves if the name that you call them calls them royalty in India. So we want to read from this article to show you that the word city means royalty because anybody who was linked to Prophet Muhammad was considered a royal, a king. So we're reading here from the previous article which explained what city means, and at the same time tried to say that it also meant they were slaves. It says here, the movement of Africans to India took place over a long period of time and has created multiple communities. Therefore, not all cities and Habshis are genealogically linked to elites or royal personalities, because the very word city means royalty. So I want you to see how these people twist words, okay? They call them royalty. The very name city means royalty in Hindu, in the language of India. let's continue on. So you can get on your search engine and just type in city and see what you find. We just wanted to show you their faces first before we continue on with the story. As you can see right here, these are black African women. And when we read through this article, you will see that they are definitely black, as we have explained before, all from Africa. All right. So, but the question is, how did all of them get to India? We got to answer that question, because people don't understand the shape of our world. They won't understand how so many Africans got to India. How did they go? Right? So reading here before we continue to explain how the Africans got to India and lived there and have property there and are part of the Indian nation but not the people. Let's just read a little bit of this for you to hear yourselves. With an estimated population of over 20,000, Sidis are descendants of the Bantu tribe from East Africa, all right? East Africa. However, their settlement in India is largely contested. That's bullshit lies. And there are two broad theories, some more lies. Some say they were brought as slaves by the Portuguese during 7th century. How can they be slaves when you call them city? Royalty. You see how they twist of words? They already told you the truth. Now they're telling you lies. But let's continue on. While others say they traveled to India as independent merchants and sellers. So that's the truth. They tell you the lie first, then they tell you the truth. So they always want you to believe that every African you see anywhere came in as slaves if they've been around there for so many years, right? Let's continue reading. Having lived in India for centuries. Oh, they lived in India for centuries. People from the Sidi community represent an amalgamation of Indian culture and African heritage. Clad in sari and bindi, the Sidi women still perform a dance form that originates from primitive African dance form. They speak in the local Konkani dialect but still struggle to be acknowledged as Indian citizens due to local prejudice based on their physical features. We're going to get into that later on. Already you know that albinos, anybody with straight hair, hate black people, so this should not be anything new as we have read to you. So like we explained, the hate starts from the fact that when black people, the ancient black Indians, all right, whose history goes further back before that, which we'll get into later, when they were inbreeding, every time these children got born, after 4 generations, they came out as white, pale skin, straight hair, no strength, not fit for anything. So they were reduced to being nothing in society, just like as albinos, anybody with straight hair now look down on black people. Back in those ancient times, it was the reverse. Black people looked down on albinos. And were they wrong to do that? No, they are not, because they are the scum of the earth. Very, very weak, have no strength, children of Satan, and are only lying. That is the obvious truth. Lie about everything. So that is what happened. But something happened, because everything, every history in this world always connects to who? The remnant, the children of the Creator. Everything that is happening in this world, all the history is always connected to them. So here is the part of the history that we tell you what happens. When the remnant gets removed by the so-called Roman Empire, the Black African Roman Empire, and the remnant is barred from coming into the Middle East, into Jerusalem. And some of them are taken as servants in servitude to Rome. Some are killed, and some of them all manner of abominations that you cannot even imagine were done to them by the Roman Empire. The remnants went into Africa and settled, traveled around a lot of places in Africa, then settled somewhere, which we can't tell you guys because you are not interested in knowing the truth, and we're not going to say it, okay? So after they had settled, the original Arabs, all right, who also share lineage, okay, to the remnant, and the Edomites. Now, here is where we start making that distinction. You have a lot of Hebrew Israelites going around calling the so-called albinos, anybody with straight hair, scum of the earth, Edomites. I want you to change that word, because the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair are not Edomites. It is insulting to be called by a name that you are not. So please change that, because the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair are not the Edomites that the Hebrew Israelites talk about, who don't know anything. So continuing on with the story, after the Romans removed the remnant and barred them from coming into the Middle East, the original Arabs and the Edomites become a threat to the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire decides to do what? Decides to invent Islam, the original Islamic teaching. And they raise someone that's called Prophet Muhammad to be a prophet to the original Arabs, which include, as you have read here, a part of the people that's known as the city. Now, this is the truth. The original Islamic people were Arabic, and they were what? The Edomites. Did you hear that now? But let's continue on with the story. So, after Muhammad is able to control both the Edomites and the original Arabs, because they are all together, they all come from the same stock and they live together, right? Because if you remember the story of the original Arabs, Abraham had a son called Ishmael, right? And Isaac had a son called Edom. And both of them, because they were not given the priesthood, became by lineage, lived together in Arabia and Eastern Africa. Because let me make you guys understand something. When you look at the map of Africa, the River Nile was a demarcation between Africa, as in Africa, Egypt, and the other side of the River Nile was known as part of Arabia. Let's pull up a map now so you guys understand what we're saying. So if you're looking at the map of Africa right now, this is the River Nile, right? Okay. Now in ancient history, this part of the River Nile right here, all this part right here, okay, was not considered to be a part of Africa. It was considered to be a part of Arabia. So in a nutshell, the countries of Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda right here, and South Sudan, right, were considered to be a part of Arabia. Hope that makes sense now. Let's continue on. So, as we explained, Ishmael and the original Arabs lived in that area. So they became a part of Sudan and the rest, right? And they became a threat to the Roman Empire. So the Romans invented the religion of Islam to control them and installed Prophet Muhammad to do so, who was what? An Edomite. So even though the Edomites and the original Arabs in Ishmael lived together, all right, they all considered them to be Arabians. So those were the original Arabs. So continuing on, after the Romans have raised Prophet Muhammad dies, and there is now a conflict of who should lead the Islamic surge of control. The original Arabs at this point in history decide to remove themselves, okay, from continuing under the leadership of the Edomites, who have the lineage of Muhammad. So they remove themselves, okay? And when they remove themselves, they still continue to fight the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire needs help, okay? So the Roman Empire needs help to fight the original Arabs. So what do? they sent their Edomites, all right, the lineage of Prophet Muhammad, into Asia to help raise an army. And who do these Edomites find and help to raise an army to continue to fight their other Arab brethren who are from Ishmael against the Romans? Who do they find? They find Genghis Khan. Do you understand the history now? They find Genghis Khan. So that is how, if you notice, in Asia you now have Islam. Does that make sense? So after they find Genghis Khan, the Romans can't control Genghis Khan after he helps them to remove the original Arabs who are not Edomites from the Middle East. They can't control Genghis Khan. So they need another army to help remove Genghis Khan. So who do they send again to raise an army and help? They send the cities, all right, who historically are Edomites mixed with other Africans, into where? Into India. To the scum of the earth albinos, to civilize and train them so that an army can be raised to help them remove Genghis Khan, which the Roman Empire could not control. Does this story now make sense? And let's show you that before we continue on. So we're reading the history now to show you how the city, who anciently are connected to the Edomites of scripture, which a lot of people will never know who they are because they're not interested in knowing, and how they were the procurers of the religion of Islam, the original Islamic religion, which is not the Islamic religion that is taught today and has no similarity in any way to the original Arab religion of Islam, which was invented by Rome though, right? So continuing on now, let's explain what happened and how the cities were used to create and foster armies. The splinter group of the cities from the lineage of Muhammad was used by the Romans to create other armies that would help them against the original Arabs, which were becoming a much more greater force, not united by the religion of Islam. We won't get into that history right now. We can share it on the Shape of Our World. But continue on, let's read here. It says, there are conflicting hypotheses on the origin of the name city. One theory that the word derives from Sahibi, an Arabic term of respect in North Africa, similar to the word Sahib in modern India and Pakistan. So do you see where the origin of the word city is from? It's from this word here, Sahib, which is pronounced Sidi. Okay, same word, okay? All right, let's continue. It says, a second theory is that the term city is derived from the title borne by the captains of the Arab vessels that first brought city settlers to India. These captains were known as Sa'id. Similarly, another term for cities, Habshi, is held to be derived from the common name for the captains of the northeastern African Abyssinian. Abyssinian there means Ethiopian, all right? Ethiopia, Sudan, that's just what it means. Ships that also first delivered city slaves to the subcontinent. Bullshit. All right, let's continue reading. Cities are also sometimes referred to as Afro-Indians. Cities, now this is the part that I want you to pay attention, all right? Cities were referred to as Zanji. Pay attention. Zanji by Arabs in China. Did you hear that? So the cities went into China, all right, and created Genghis Khan because some of these cities still bear the name Khan. That is why, if you notice, a lot of ancient Chinese dressing looks Arabic because they first had the Arab religion before the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, brought Buddhism or Buddhism to them, which is Hinduism. Okay, let's continue reading. It says, various transcriptions of this Arabic word were used, including Sinchi. I don't know how to pronounce it right, but you've probably seen this a couple of times in so many places in books and history. You heard this name, Sinchi and Jingxi, or Jingzi, if that's the way it's pronounced in Mandarin, which I do not know. Okay, sorry. I caught myself laughing. I know someone's going to say we know tricks of the S trade is oriental. But let's continue on, okay? Okay, continue reading. I had to calm myself because everybody else is breaking into a laugh around me. So let's continue reading now. It says, the first cities are thought to have arrived in India in 628 AD at the Baruch port. So 628 AD, right? That's how many years? That's about almost, let's say, 1,000 years before the so-called albinos, anybody with straight hair, came out of India in the Ottoman Empire in the 1500s, right? Okay, let's continue reading. I just want you to know that timeline is false. And you guys don't want to know the original timeline of the world. But for now, let's continue on. Continue reading. It says, several others followed with the first Arab Islamic conquest of the subcontinent in 712 AD. So Africans conquered Asia. City, another name that you can call them Edomites. All right? But they are no longer around there. That's the funny thing. Where did they go? We'll continue with this story at some other time, but for now, we just want you to see the picture right here of Ikhlas Khan, African Prime Minister of Bijapur, because we want you to see that the name Khan came from the cities which was given to Genghis Khan, an Oriental, to help create an Oriental army to help the Romans to remove the original Arabs. And this is how Africans went into the continent of India and trained the scum of the earth Indians to create an army that will help to remove Genghis Khan. And this is how the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, were given the knowledge. They were given the knowledge of civilization from Africans until today. The continent or the country of India, the continent of Satan, the country of Satan, of the scum of the earth, children of Satan, still cannot be civilized. They still defecate in the streets. They are filthy and dirty because of inbreeding. And they are the people whom everybody today worships and think, oh, they are so clean, they know how to do everything, when they do not know how to clean their own butts still, and still defecate on the streets in India, in albinos, anybody with straight hair, the scum of the earth. This is what you've married and kept in your house as a black man, and say proud you have what? You have a white woman. You married an Indian. Shame on you. Shame on you for hating yourself, hating your blackness, hating the black woman which the Creator gave you, and you chose a dirty, smelling, stinking Indian. A scum of the earth albino, anybody with straight hair, whose origin is from India, to be your wife. You hated yourself so much to do that, and thought that you were sitting on top of the world. All right, let's continue now with Legends of Roll Call. So the history of the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, who look down on black people, who are wicked and evil, and have brought upon us the end of the world, because the Creator said that nobody should procreate with an albino, anybody with straight hair. He said so. And some did. So, what we want to show you now is the history of the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, who owe all their knowledge to Africans who brought that knowledge of civilization to them and helped to create the Ottoman Empire, which was now used to remove Genghis Khan, who the Romans could not control. And after the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, whose origins are from India in the Ottoman Empire, removed Genghis Khan, they now overtook the Roman Empire per se. we could say they overtook them, right? They overtook the Roman Empire, and because they are children of Satan, Satan now has made everybody, and every black person has realized and known this for donkey years right from time, that if you want any success, you have to associate yourself with albinos, anybody with straight-haired children of Satan. And so when this come of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair, overtook the Roman Empire. They now overtook all the structures that Africans built and whitewashed and rewrote scriptures, introduced the New Testament and wrote themselves into history. And now everybody believes that everybody in history is an albino, anybody with straight hair. When the albinos, anybody with straight hair, did not come into this power fully until the 1700s, which is barely how long? 321 years ago as at this time. This is the story. And so it doesn't just look like Turks of the Strait is the one telling you just a story. We are going to play a clip of a video of someone who is Indian, who will tell you that the idea of whiteness got introduced into history in the 1500s by the Ottoman Empire. In the reverse of the caste system. So you have to understand this. After the cities brought civilization and trained the albinos, anybody with straight hair scum of the earth, in India to create an army to remove Genghis Khan. After that happened, the albinos decided to get rid of the people who trained them because they had come into power. Because remember, the albinos in India were increasing exponentially because everybody else was inbreeding, so there were few blacks. So they turned and reversed the caste system and now made blacks to be the lower rung of society. And this is why the city are still in their enclave and refuse to mix with the Indians in India. So they reversed that caste system in order to control the blacks and introduce fully into humanity the concept of whiteness, which is only set the stage to show you that we are getting ready for destruction. So you're looking at the screen and we're talking about the Ottoman Empire. But before we talk about the Ottoman Empire, let's play a clip to show you how Indians who hate black people and will never ever love them are trying as much as possible to remove the cities, the Africans in India, from their land so that they can overtake them, and have no respect for the people who brought them civilization, and they still do not have it till today. Let's play that clip and then we'll come back and continue this.
ಐದುನೂರು ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಆಫ್ರಿಕಾದಿಂದ ಭಾರತಕ್ಕೆ ಕರೆತರಲಾಯಿತು. ಇಂದು ಭಾರತದಲ್ಲಿ ಜನರು ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಸಿದ್ಧಿ ಜನರು ಎಂದು ಕರೆಯುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಸಿದ್ಧಿ ಎಂದರೆ ಪ್ರಬುದ್ಧವಾದದ್ದು. ತಲತಲಾಂತರದಿಂದ ನನ್ನ ಕುಟುಂಬವು ಭಾರತ ದೇಶದ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಕಾಡಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನೆಲೆಸಿದೆ. ಈ ಕಾಡು ನಾವು ತಿಳಿದಿರುವ ಜೀವನ. ಇದು ನಮಗೆ ರಕ್ಷಣೆ ಮತ್ತು ಆಹಾರವನ್ನು ನೀಡಿ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಪೋಷಿಸುತ್ತದೆ. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಬಹುತೇಕ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸಿಸುತ್ತಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಬ್ರಿಟಿಷರು ಭಾರತವನ್ನು 1947ರವರೆಗೆ ಆಳಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ಸಿದ್ಧಿಗಳು ಕಾಡಿನಿಂದ ಹೊರಗೆ ಬಂದು ವಾಸಿಸಲು ಬಯಸಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆಫ್ರಿಕಾ ನಮ್ಮಿಂದ ಸಾವಿರಾರು ಮೈಲು ದೂರದಲ್ಲಿದ್ದರೂ ಆಫ್ರಿಕತನವು ನಮ್ಮಿಂದ ಎಂದೂ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗಿಲ್ಲ. ನಮ್ಮ ಗುರುತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಆಫ್ರಿಕದ ಆತ್ಮವು ನೆಲೆಸಿದೆ. ಸಂಗೀತ ಮತ್ತು ನೃತ್ಯದ ಮೂಲಕ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಪೂರ್ವಜರ ತುಣುಕುಗಳನ್ನು ಸಂರಕ್ಷಿಸಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಬಡತನದ ಸರಳ ಜೀವನ ನಡೆಸುತ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತನಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಸಿದ್ಧಿ ಜನರಿಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಲು ನನ್ನ ಜೀವನವನ್ನೇ ಸಮರ್ಪಿಸಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಸಿದ್ಧಿಗಳನ್ನು ಪರಿಶಿಷ್ಟ ಪಂಗಡ ಎಂದು ಕಾನೂನುಬದ್ಧವಾಗಿ ರಕ್ಷಿಸಲಾಗಿದೆ. ನಾವು ಅನೇಕ ಹೋರಾಟದಿಂದ ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಬದುಕಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ನಾನು ಬೇರೆ ನಗರಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದರೆ ಅದೊಂದು ನನಗೆ ಕಷ್ಟಕರವಾದ ಜೀವನ. ನನ್ನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇತರ ಜನರು ಏನು ಹೇಳುತ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆಂಬುದು ನಾನು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳಬಲ್ಲೆ. ಕೆಲವು ಅಪರಿಚಿತರು ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು, ನೋಡಿರಿ ಆ ಕಪ್ಪು ಜನನನ್ನು, ನೋಡಿರಿ ಅವನ ಚರ್ಮವು ಬಹಳ ಹೊಲಸಾಗಿದೆ, ನೋಡಿರಿ ಅವನ ಕೂದಲು ಸುಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗಿದೆ. ಅವರು ನನಗೆ ಏನೂ ತಿಳಿದಿಲ್ಲ ಎಂದು ಭಾವಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲವನ್ನೂ ತಿಳಿದಿರುತ್ತೇನೆ. ಇದು ನನ್ನನ್ನು ತುಂಬ ಏಕಾಂಗಿತನಕ್ಕೆ ತಳ್ಳುತ್ತಿದೆ. ಭಾರತದ ಜಾತಿ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಣರು, ಈ ಜಾತಿ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಷತ್ರಿಯ, ವೈಶ್ಯ, ನಂತರ ಸಿದ್ಧಿಗಳು ಶೂದ್ರ ವರ್ಗದಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಭಾರತದ ಜಾತಿ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯು ಅಷ್ಟು ಪ್ರಬಲವಾಗಿದೆ. ಇದು ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜೀವನದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಂಶಗಳನ್ನು ನೇಯ್ದಿದೆ. ಇದು ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಜನರಿಗೆ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದ ದಿನದಿಂದ ಸಾವಿನ ದಿನದವರೆಗೆ ಪರಿಣಾಮ ಬೀರುತ್ತಿದೆ. ನಾವು ನನ್ನ ಹಳ್ಳಿಯ ಸುತ್ತಮುತ್ತಲಿನ ಕಾಡಿನಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸಿಸಿ ಅಲೆಯುವಾಗ ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಣರ ಪ್ರಭಾವಕ್ಕೆ ಒಳಗಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಹಿಂದೂ ಧರ್ಮಕ್ಕೆ ಪರಿವರ್ತಿಸಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ನಾವು ಅಸ್ಪೃಶ್ಯರಾಗಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಹಿಂದೂ ಧರ್ಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಜನರು ಅಸ್ಪೃಶ್ಯರಿಂದ ಮುಟ್ಟಿಸಿಕೊಂಡರೆ ಅವರು ಶಾಪಗ್ರಸ್ತರಾಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಎಂದು ಜನರು ನಂಬುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಸ್ಪೃಶ್ಯರನ್ನು ಕೊನೆಯ ವರ್ಗದ ನಾಗರಿಕರು ಎಂದು ಪರಿಗಣಿಸಲಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಆದರೆ ಇದು ಆಯ್ಕೆ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಣರು, ಸಿದ್ಧಿಗಳು ಅಸ್ಪೃಶ್ಯರು ಎನ್ನುವ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಅವರ ಮನೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇರಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ಳುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿದ್ಧಿಗಳು ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಣರ ಮನೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ನಮಗೆ ಆಹಾರವನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟರೂ ಅವರ ಮನೆಯೊಳಗೆ ನಾವು ನಿಜವಾದ ಪಾತ್ರೆಯನ್ನು ಬಳಸುವಂತಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ಬಾಳೆ ಎಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ತಿನ್ನಬೇಕು. ನಾವು ಹೊರಗಡೆ ತಿನ್ನಬೇಕು. ನಾವು ತಿಂದು ಮುಗಿದ ಮೇಲೆ ಆ ಜಾಗವನ್ನು ಸ್ವಚ್ಛಗೊಳಿಸಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಉಪಸ್ಥಿತಿಯಿಂದ ಆ ಜಾಗ ಕಲುಷಿತಗೊಂಡಿದೆ ಎಂದು ಅವರು ಭಾವಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾವು ಅವರ ಪ್ರಾಣಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಕನಿಷ್ಠ ಎಂದು ಅವರು ಪರಿಗಣಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ವಾಸಿಸುವ ಸಿದ್ಧಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅನೇಕರು ಭೂಮಿಯ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳೊಂದಿಗೆ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನು ಎದುರಿಸುತ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಾವು ಭೂಮಾಲೀಕತ್ವವನ್ನು ಸಾಬೀತುಪಡಿಸುವ ತಮ್ಮ ಬಳಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ವಾಸಿಸುವುದು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟವಿಲ್ಲ. ನಮ್ಮ ಭೂಮಿಯ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳನ್ನು ಭದ್ರಪಡಿಸುವುದು ನನ್ನ ಕೆಲಸದ ಒಂದು ಭಾಗವೂ ಆಗಿದೆ.
इतलंच माका आणि हा लपड्या करून आणि कोणाच्या हात गेल्या बी झकड्या का येईना नाही बाहेर खंय तर
GPS ಹಿಂಗ ಬಾहेरಗೆಲ್ಲ जाऊ देत ना एक कोणतरी अयो पापा ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ದವರು ಇರಲಿ म्हणून सांगतले ಹೊರತು
ना हाकाची आमच्या हाकातले एरिया तरी आम्ही कोण घेताले
नाही आता येता आता ते पाठी जाल्ले कसले करून घेतले कसले जेवण मान घेतले की ते आता घेणू पे ना आता तेणी करून दिला रे ते हाती मेळणं
कोणतरी अयो पापा ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ದವರು ಇರಲಿ म्हणून सांगतले ಹೊರತು ಹೆಣಿ ಹೇ सोडून दुसऱ्या कडे गेला ह्या वारगिन ಬಂದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ म्हणून GPS केला बी जीवन करता देना
गेलो म्हणून समजी आता तेणी करून दिला रे ते हाती मेळनंतर वयच्या जात की कशी अशी इतले हा हाती मेळत काय ना
ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಯುವಜನರು ಮನುಷ್ಯರಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಎಂದು ಭಾವಿಸಿದಾಗ ನೀವು ಹೇಗೆ ಅಧಿಕಾರ ನೀಡುತ್ತೀರಿ? ಈ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಯು ನನ್ನನ್ನು ರಾತ್ರಿ ಇಡೀ ನಿದ್ದೆಯಿಂದ ಎಚ್ಚರಿಸಿ ಕಾಡುತ್ತದೆ. ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಕಪ್ಪು.
So you heard there You saw it right there. Caught on camera. The racism that goes on with the very people that they call royalty. The descendants who refuse to mix with the abominations but decided to be a community of their own. After what? The reverse of the caste system and the Ottoman Empire taking over Asia and also taking over Orientals who have now become albino as the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair who reside in India. So continuing on now, let's show you what the meaning of Ottoman means so you can definitely understand that it does mean India. So as we read here, it says the Ottoman Empire, Ottoman Turkish, it writes it in Arabic. I don't know how to read or spell Arabic or this over there, but I want to click on the meaning of Ottoman Turkish for you to understand what it means, because it's one of the same word, because it says the Ottoman Empire, then gives the word here Ottoman Turkish. Okay, that means it's talking about Ottoman. All right, Ottoman Turkish. It says Ottoman Turkish. Ottoman Turkish writes in Arabic. Lisan Osmani Turkish, Osmanli Turkish, was the standardized register of the Turkish language used in the Ottoman Empire. Pay attention. 14th to 20th century CE. See that timeline right there? 14th means 15th century, because this is the time that the Ottoman Empire, the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair, came into power and changed everything. Continue reading. It says, it borrowed extensively in all aspects from Arabic and Persian. Now, we already told you earlier that Persian today had no association with anywhere in Iran and Iraq. This is a new terminology. Persian has always been African. But since we're trying to get a message to you, let us see what they tell us what Persian means in our own understanding today, all right? Because Persian is associated with Iran and Iraq, right? Let's go read up. So reading the Persian language, since we made you understand that Ottoman, as they tell us, means Ottoman Turkish, the language, right? The Ottoman Turkish language is associated with Iran and Iraq because Iran and Iraq is known as Persia today, all right? Let's continue. It says Persian, also known by its endonym Farsi. So Persian and Farsi is one and the same language. The real word for that language, because it's an Indian language, should be Farsi. Let's continue reading. It says, it's a Western Iranian language belonging to the Iranian branch of the what? Indo-Iranian subdivision. What does Indo mean? Indo is the same word as India. Did you see that? Did you see how we started from the Ottoman Empire, traced it down to the language to show you that it is India? All right, let's continue on with Legends of Roll Call. So we've arrived at the section of the video in which you probably have heard us say this repeatedly, and it might provoke some emotion, might provoke some anger, might provoke maybe any kind of hatred or feeling towards the message, because people think, especially for those who love their albinos, anybody with straight hair, scum of the earth, think that it's insulting the way we present this information. Well, you should ask the albinos what they have done. All that we have showed you, isn't it insulting to humanity that the only time that you're getting mad is because we are calling them by their name? If someone calls you a nigger, it means black. If you call me a nigger and I am black, I am not going to get offended. Nigger is just the word for black. If I call you an albino, anybody with straight hair, are you not an albino? Am I calling you anything out of order? So there's no need for people to get unnecessarily offended about the truth. Deal with it. So this is the part of the video that we finally make you understand and see why we call albinos the scum of the earth, children of Satan. It is with very specific reasons that we use those words. We are not just saying it out of saying it just to provoke anybody. It is the literal truth. Do you know why? Because people have not come to understand this. India is the only country in the world named after Satan. Someone's going to say, huh? Really? Yes. The very meaning of the word India, okay, means Satan. And we'll have a more perfect explanation of all this in The Shape of a World, which ties to a great epic story that you have heard before. But for now, I want you to pay attention now. The word India means Satan. Now, pay attention now. African countries, African people, for those who are in the occult, and several African ethnicities all have a name for Satan. Satan has many different names. The word that we now call Satan here is just the general name for all the names of Satan. So far, if you've been here listening on Legends of Roll Call, we've tried to make you understand that the name Jesus means Satan. The names Jehovah means Satan. The names Lord and God means Satan. In the Bible, the name called Baal is also Satan. All right? So all the names that you've seen in the Bible which make a reference to the Creator are all names of Satan. The scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair, changed all those names to the worship of their own Creator, which they have always worshipped right from time, which is Satan. And that name is India. India means Satan. It is the only country in the world that bears credence to the fact that it named their country after Satan. Now, Europeans have different names for Satan in any of the European mythologies. You've probably heard of Zeus. Zeus is the name for Satan. You've heard of Jupiter is the name for Satan. You've heard of maybe all the Roman or Greek mythologies. All the different names for the deities that you have there are the names for Satan. Okay? When we say Satan here, we are talking about Satan as in Satan himself. Oh goodness. I know someone's going to say, what is he saying? Is it real? Yes, that's what we're saying. So Satan has so many different names in so many different ethnicities. And like we have explained, the name Zeus, the name Jupiter, the names Mars is all names for Satan. Saturn, name for Satan. Mercury, name for Satan. Because every ethnicity had its own form of calling upon the name of Satan in their own language. So continue reading here. We want to show you the origin of the word India for you to know that it means Satan, and that the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair, are the only people in the world that name their country after Satan. Other African ethnicities worship Satan in their own pagan religions, but they never named their country to the name of Satan. It's only the scum of the earth, albinos, anybody with straight hair, because their origin is from Satan. And we're getting into that now as we start with revealing what the name India means, which means Satan. So the name India is gotten from the word Indus. All right? So you're probably looking at the screen and saying, what does that mean? As you can see right, he says Indra, right? But we're trying to make you understand the meaning of the name India. India comes from the word Indus. Now, what does Indus mean? Because you've probably heard of it before, Indus Valley, which is in a part of India. Why did they name them Indus? So Hindu is the same as saying Hindi, Hindu, or India. It's one and the same name. All right, pronounced differently, but it all means Satan. Now, in India, all the Hindu religions know Satan through the name of Indus. They pronounce it differently. Maybe they can say Indra or the rest. We'll get into that later, but for now, we just want you to pay attention, right? So the very meaning of the word India means Satan. And let's read something in here. So you're looking at the meaning of the word Indra. As you can see, it's a masculine name. That means Satan is a man. It says Hinduism, Indian, Hindi, Nepali, because it's one and the same word. See that? All this word here means the same thing. Remember what we told you, when you take out H, all right, from Hinduism, what do you have? You have India, I-N-D, I-N-D, all right? Hindi is the same word. So reading here, it says, meaning and history of Indra, means possessing drops of rain, from Sanskrit, which just means Indu, okay? From Sanskrit. Means possessing drops of rain from Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the script of writing Hindu language. Okay? So remember that. It says Indu, meaning a drop, and Ra, meaning acquiring, possessing. So you've probably heard of the name Ra before in Egyptian mythology, but you didn't quite know, right, that Ra is also a part of what? Indian mythology, because Ra is Satan. All right? So Indu, which is from where you have the word India, means a drop, and Ra meaning acquiring, possessing. Indra is the name of the ancient Indian warrior god of the sky and rain. He is chief god in the Rig Veda. So, what did you get from that? Satan is the one who controls the rain in our world right now. When the Creator created the world, there was no such thing as rain. Now, if you read in scripture and they tell you that during the flood, that is when rain started, and that the Creator opened the windows of heaven and poured out rain, that was rewritten by the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, to lie to you that there was such a thing as rain. When the flood came upon the earth, the Bible says that the fountains of the deep opened up. So if you go into the Atlantic, there's what they call the Atlantic Trench. Let's see if we can pull up a picture. So here is the image of the Atlantic Trench. You can call it the Atlantic Trench, or the proper word would be Mid-Atlantic Ridge, okay? So when the flood happened, this is where the earth, you can see there is a line right here that starts from the top, right, and comes all the way down to the bottom. This is when the earth opened up and all the flood waters, the waters that's underneath the earth, burst out onto the earth and caused the flood. Then if you also go and look up into the sky, there is what is called the Great Rift or Milky Way. So, but if you read in any Bible outside of the Greek Septuagint, you'll find out that they change the words for the floodgates, all right, of heaven to the windows of heaven, which are not one and the same. So let me show you what I mean now so you'll get a correct picture. This is the Great Rift, which is sometimes called the Milky Way because people don't understand what they're looking at. White supremacy just makes up any story and they believe it. This is what actually broke open on top of heaven for the flood to come down on earth, and while the earth also broke up, all right, and brought about waters upon the earth. Let's read it from scripture and show you how they changed it. The scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, changed it so that people would not know that the windows of heaven are not the floodgates of heaven. The windows of heaven are always open to give us water, but not as rain. It's Satan that changed the waters to fall like rain and would give some places rain, and some other places it would give it drought, because Satan is always distorting things. And because of that, he was known as the god of weather, in which every African ethnicity, and then the scum of the earth albinos, anybody with straight hair, called him Indra, from the name Indus, which means India, as their god, and is the only country in the world that is named after Satan. Just like the remnant is the only country in the world that is named after the Creator, and none of you know it. So let's show you how we've been confused by the scum of the earth albino supremacies the people of Satan, as you're going to find out as we're getting along, that the name India actually means Satan. It's the only country in the world which is named after Satan. Just like the remnant named their country of origin, which they now reside now, after getting out of the Middle East, after the name of the Creator himself. And is the only country in the world named after the Creator. All right? So right now, we are reading from Genesis chapter number 7. To the right of your screen that you're seeing our mouse hovering right here, you're looking at Genesis chapter number 7 verse 11 in the Greek Septuagint Bible. To the left of the screen, you have Genesis chapter number 7 in verse number 11 in the Geneva Bible. We are going to read both for you to see the differences, because this is how people get confused. Now we are reading from Genesis chapter number 7 in verse number 11 in the Greek Septuagint. And it says, in the 600th year of the life of Noah, in the second month, on the 27th day of the month, on this day, all the fountains of the abyss were broken up. Fountains of abyss, let's pull up a picture so you see it again. So this is the fountains of the abyss that we just read. Is the mid-Atlantic ridge. This broke up, all right? And all the waters from underneath the earth came on top of the earth and caused the flood. Now let's continue reading. Continue reading. It says, on this day, all the fountains of the abyss were broken up, and the floodgates of heaven were opened. So what's the floodgates of heaven? Let's show you. This is what you see in the night sky every day, which is called or told to you to be the Milky Way. Do you see how deceptive these people are? Albinos, anybody with straight hair, they change everything. But that's not even the part we want to show you. But when you read that part, when it says the floodgates of heaven, you can see that it specifically says floodgates of heaven, right? And this is the floodgates of heaven told to you in false signs to be the Milky Way, all right, or the Great Rift. Let's continue reading. So now we're going to read that same portion of Genesis chapter number 7 in the Hebrew Masoretic text, where all the Bibles that people read from come today. So we're reading from the Geneva Bible, which was translated out of the Hebrew Masoretic text, all right, which was created by the evil, wicked, albinos, anybody with straight hair, scum of the earth, children of Satan. It says here in verse number 11, chapter number 7 of Genesis, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, in the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up. And see what they changed. And the windows of heaven were opened. The Bible never said that. It said floodgates of heaven. Because they don't want you to understand that there is a difference between the two. There are windows of heaven in reality, and there are floodgates of heaven. But why wouldn't they show you the real windows of heaven in signs, as they have lied to you? Because Satan controls the weather. Everything about the weather that we see today, besides the sun and the moon and the stars rising, all the global warming, so on and so forth, is controlled and run by Satan. So, the people who were into Satanism, who worship Satan, the Gentile nations, all of them had a name for Satan, because Satan was the one they would pray to have rain if there was no rain. So they had different names for Satan in every ethnicity. But the only people who named their country after the name of Satan in Indra, which they knew, are the albinos, anybody with straight hair, scum of the earth, because they are the children of Satan. And we're getting into the origin stories now. India is the only nation in the world in which the name means Satan. Just like the remnant is the only country in the world in which its name is named after the Creator. So do you see what changed? They switched it up. Windows of heaven and floodgates of heaven are not one and the same thing. The floodgates are floodgates. Exactly that. The windows of heaven is what gives us rain, which Satan has changed, because when the Creator created the world, He did not make rain. The rain that we see right now is of Satan. Everything about the weather, the storms, the snow, the hurricane, the earthquakes, right? The volcanoes, the mudslides, the tsunamis are all caused by Satan. That is why they call it acts of Satan, in which people call acts of God. It's got nothing to do with the Creator. And the change of weather, Satan is changing the weather for a very specific reason, which we are going to get into later on Legends of Roll Call. But for now, let's continue to show you that India means Satan. So since you've understood that Satan is the one controlling the weather and everything around us, and the wicked albinos, anybody with straight hair know this. So all the lies of global warming, they know that Satan is the one doing all this, but they want to blame humanity for it. Because Satan is trying to cover up something which we are going to expose later on Legends of Roll Call. So keep on listening, all right? We'll get to that part later. So here, you have to understand now that the word India is from Indu. Indu means a drop, and Ra meaning acquiring, possessing, because Satan was the one known to control weather, all right? So he was known as the one possessing rain. And Satan came in many different names by different ethnicities all over the world who prayed to him to give them rain, because Satan controls the weather. You see that storm, you see the lightning, that is all Satan. Okay? All right, let's continue reading now to show you some other stuff. So we copied this from a website on, we're not going to show you the link of the website. When you get our Bible, if you get to that point that we esteem that you should have the Bible, when you get it, then you have all this information. Before you can get the Bible, you also have to have the book, the DVDs, and the Shape of a World before you can get the Bible. Okay? So now we are reading to show you how the name India, because it's from Indra right here, that you have the name India. Because Indra comes from the name Indus, which is the same thing as saying Hindu. India, all one and the same name, the name of Satan. So as we read right here, it says Indra, right? Let's blow this up as much as we can. It said Indra. Sanskrit, remember Sanskrit is the ancient script for writing Hindu, all right? It says it's an ancient Vedic deity in Hinduism, means in India. He is guardian deity in Buddhism. So you can see what we are trying to show you here. Buddhism is the worship of Satan. So can you see everything that people are doing in the East? When you see Orientals praying to Buddha, they are praying to Satan. It's the worship of Satan. Let's continue. It says, and the king of the highest heaven called Saduma Kapai in Jainism. So it's Satan that they are talking about here. Satan is not the king of the highest heaven. It's the heaven that we are under right now. Let's continue reading. It says, he is also an important deity worshipped in Kalasha religion, indicating his prominence in ancient Hinduism. Indra's mythology and powers are similar to other Indian European deities because everything about Europe, the religion, all right, the culture was all gotten from India. From the albinos, anybody with straight hair, scum of the earth who are children of Satan, who named their country after Satan in their language known as India. India means Satan. Let's continue reading. It says, deities such as Jupiter, pay attention now, Jupiter was worshipped by who? The Romans, right? Perun, Pecunas, Zalmosis, Taranis, Zeus. Zeus was worshipped by who? The Greeks. And Thor, suggesting a common origin in Proto-Indo-European mythology. What are they trying to tell you? It's telling you that all the European mythology of which the black Africans got were gotten from India. Because the name India means Satan. Indra. combination of two words, Indus, which means drops, and Ra means acquiring or possessing what? Drops of rain, because Satan is the one acquiring the waters that come out from the windows of heaven, which is supposed to wet the world and forming rain. That is his name. India, Indus, Indra, one and the same name. And it's from this name that all the black Africans who went to India, to the people whom the Creator told everybody not to go to, the albinos, anybody with straight hair scum of the earth, do not go to these people. Do not be with them, for they will lead you in their wicked ways. And the whole world now is filled with them in every way. They are the ones who brought the teaching and knowledge of Satan to the whole entire world. You can see the origin now of all the names of Satan from India, because India means Satan. Is the same word as Indra, as we have shown you, that Indra is from a combination of two words, Indus and Ra, and it's from Indus that you have the word India, because Indus means drops of rain, and Ra means the one who possesses or acquires drops of rain.